I've got approved data in front of me. This is the GA8 maintenance manual. So before you go out to do the job, you really should familiarise yourself with the technical data for doing the job you've been asked to do. Other items to consider: personal protection equipment, safety glasses, calibrated tooling. We have a tyre inflator and a torque wrench here. And after the job, post-maintenance independent checks. Alright, when you approach the aircraft to do your tyre change, just make sure that you've got chocks in place, it's on level ground, and it's not going to go anywhere. Obviously the ideal place to do this would be in a hangar, but sometimes you're going to have to do it outside. So here we are ready to remove this wheel. We have a jack, we have a block just in case the wheel is left off for a prolonged period of time. We've got the tools. We're going to remove the back plates. So you take your 7/16 ratchet and you loosen them off, okay? And then, if they're loose enough, you can just unscrew them with the bolts with your fingers and then take out the back shells. Okay, I'm going to bring the jack in now, and there's a jacking pad on the bottom of the leg. You can see that I've moved the caliper out the way so it doesn't get in the way of the jack. And now we will jack the aircraft up and get the weight off the wheel. Is remove the cotter pin and then we can remove the wheel nut. So between using a pair of side cutters and these, we should be able to easily get out the cotter pin without damaging the wheel nut. Okay, so out comes the cotter pin. Obviously this will be replaced. Now this may or may not, that's a bit tight, so we can take our pliers and grab hold of that tube. It won't take much to undo it, and then the rest of it can be done with your fingers. Okay, and then once you've removed that, you can now remove the whole wheel. Put my block underneath. If I was walking away from the aircraft, I would lower this down onto the block. Okay, so now we're ready to put the wheel back on. So we can take our block, take that out of the way, take our wheel. The wheel will slide back on. Okay, now we've got our nut. The holes go on the outside. Okay, this is going to screw back on again. Now, just one precaution. We've had a report from one of our programs where they over tightened the nut and the wheels were dragging, and the pilot noticed it on takeoff, and they aborted the takeoff, and they came back and they found that these wheel nuts had been over tightened and there's a lot of drag on the wheel. You tighten up the nut, you spin the wheel one way, then you can check the nut's tight again, and I would turn the nut so that the cotter pin lines up with the hole. Now the next thing to check is that there's no looseness on the wheel. If I just back that off a little bit, like to the next hole, you might find now, and you probably can't hear it, but I can actually feel some movement on the wheel, so I know that's too loose. So I can go back one more hole, ready for the cotter pin. There's no movement and it's freely turning. So that's the right amount of preload on the nut. Okay, so now we've got our wheel nut aligned. We've got our new cotter pin to go in. The pin should go in quite nicely. I just dropped it in the wrong place. Okay, and you've got two legs. You've got a short leg and a long leg. So we'll take the longer of the legs and we'll pull it up and we'll bend it over like that. And the short leg, you might be able to get with your pliers and then bend underneath. Okay, so that's what it should look like when you've done. Now we can put our caliper back on and we can torque the nuts. So our caliper needs to go line onto the spigots. So we're now putting the bolts back on the brake caliper. In the manual it doesn't actually refer to a torque, but in the manufacturer of the calipers it does refer to a torque. When you buy a new caliper it comes with a placard on it which tells you the torque is 90 inch-pounds. So I have my torque wrench here which is adjusted to 90 inch-pounds. And then I will now torque these bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is our job done. Obviously the last thing to do now the job is finished is fill out your paperwork, sign the MR, and then you're safe to go flying.